I went to that moment for 6 years. So many things happened to me as a musician during that time. I evolved, I changed, but there was always the purpose to record the debut full-length album. And in July 25th of 2020, it had finally happened. I am on Catalyst, and this is how I recorded my debut album, The History of One Disease. What was the most surprising about it is how spontaneously it was. Honestly, I didn't plan to make this album. It was I was working on some other stuff then, and I didn't even have idea of creating something like that. It was something very unique and special. So I'd like to tell about how I was making it in this podcast. I will not tell much about the meaning of the album because it is too personal for me, but I'll tell more about some backstage and technical aspects of the creating process. Before telling about the album itself, I would like to start from prehistory because it is important to mention all of my last attempts to record the debut album. The year when I first time got inspired to record a full-length album was in 2014. I was 14 years old then, and I was 2 years in music. Um, what kind of music was I into when I was a teen? Well, I neither played instruments nor did vocals. I was a rapper. I was such a hip hop nerd then. Most of my free time I was listening to rap, mostly rap from different countries from 80s, 90s and early 2000s. From 14 to 16 years old until I recorded my first song, most of my time that I spent was writing the lyrics for my debut rap album to become a hip hop legend like Dr. Dre, Eminem, Biggie Smalls, Ice Cube, etc. At the beginning, I was naive and I didn't know how it really worked, so I was gathering the money for the professional studio. It was until 2015 when one good man convinced me to record at home. He told me to buy a microphone, a MIDI keyboard and Cubase software. Later, in late 2015, I downloaded FL Studio, started making my first hip hop beats, and in December of 2015 I bought a microphone, a pair of cheap loudspeakers and headphones. When I've done enough of hip hop beats, I gathered 10 of them into one beat tape. Can it be called a debut album? Maybe, in some kind of way, but it wasn't the kind of album I planned to record, so it should be considered a demo, and it is a demo. It is called the Earquake Beats, like the earthquake, but the earquake. I just thought it would be a cool word. I just thought it would be a cool wordplay. Besides hip hop, I did experiments in electronic music. Most of the electronic music that I listened were The Prodigy, the Chemical Brothers, the Fatboy Slim and Bumfunk MCs. Yes, not a lot. Yes, the very mainstream bands of 90s and early 2000s. But those bands were my main influences in electronic music, so in 2015 I also created the debut EP by my side project Anti-Exorcist that is called 5 Chapters, because there were 5 tracks. Anyway, I'm glad that I recorded that stuff. It was my first experience about recording and designing because I also did the cover arts in Photoshop. So what were the results of 2015? I learned how to use DAW, Digital Workstation, and Photoshop. Also, I've done one demo, one EP, and I possessed equipment to start recording. I think it's already a successful progress. In 2016, I spent most of my time writing the lyrics, making beats, and working on the tracks by my side project Anti-Exorcist. So, in late 2016, I made the debut full-length album, The Fetus, and I finally recorded my first rap song, Graffiti Ninja, where I was rapping about my graffiti experience. That was the first time when I recorded vocals. Recording the first song is as great as losing virginity. Also, in late 2016, I started getting into the horrorcore subgenre. My music became more dark and edgy. I tried to be as disgusting in my music as I could. So I deleted all of my lyrics that I wrote during 2014 and 15. I started everything again from scratch to work on my debut horrorcore album. Late 2016 and the whole 2017 were very productive. That was truly awesome. I released lots of rap songs. Seriously, I was recording about one song a week. So, and 6 of those songs that I recorded were united into one demo, which was called Mad Lyrics. I also recorded almost all material for the horrorcore album, except for last song. But I didn't like the result. I stopped just because I didn't like the result. So later I decided to re-record the album with my new skills. Planned to record a mixtape as well, but I didn't finish it. I made only 2 songs for it. Later I quit re-recording the debut album and started everything again. I didn't complete it again because in late 2017 I started getting into different music genres besides rap. So later I quit rapping. I just rap wasn't interesting for me anymore. From that unmade horrorcore album that from 2017, only the lyrics for 3 songs remained. So in early 2018 I decided to record them and released my first and final horrorcore EP. I released it. It was very expressive and emotional, but awful. It was so awful. I don't know what the fuck did I think about when I tried to record it. I really don't understand why I thought it would be awesome to just to record it and to post it in internet. Later I deleted it. Anyway, so I don't care anymore. I tried to forget it like nightmare, and I succeeded in it. I just regretted that I wasted my time on it. I also tried to write some rap lyrics in 2019, but I quickly stopped. I just understood that I passed through it already, and I just don't need it anymore. I would like to give one advice to the younger generation of musicians. Guys, if you decided to quit something because you're not interested in it anymore and grown out of it, then do it without considering. Don't let your past pull you down. Just go on without turning back. Okay, it was kind of off topic. Let's get back to late 2017. In late 2017, I recorded one EP and 2 albums by 2 side projects, Anti-Exorcist and Griby Shock. It was very interesting and unique experience for me. Those albums, just one thing, that those albums were first 2 conceptual releases. Then I started taking more care about the concept, not just recorded a bunch of the songs, and then just releasing them as something as as one album. No, I started more taking care about concept. I started considering more what it's gonna be about. So it became mature, more mature from what I've done before. It's a really great progress. It was a really great progress for me. Well, firstly, in that period, it was the fall of 2017. I recorded the songs for the Venomous Nature EP by Anti-Exorcist. I planned it to be the second and the last full-length album by an Anti-Exorcist, but after my experiments with dark ambient, I decided to stop recording the material for the Venomous Nature and left it just as an EP. So I started recording material for two albums, Revenge by Gribishock and Ember by Anti-Exorcist. I wanted to record them and then finally close all of the side projects that I've had then. So I did it. I just wanted to focus on my main music instead of creating thousands of side projects. In early 2018, I made my first and the last EP in the horrorcore genre from the remains of the material that I didn't want to waste. It was a mistake. Better if I never recorded. I already told about it. So this is it. I just closed all of my side projects, and then I tried to more concentrate on my main music. So, but in the summer of 2018, there was one interesting thing, that in the summer of 2018, I tried to do something in FL Studio just as an experiment, and I created some electronic songs, and I thought, what could it be? I didn't want it to be my main music, and then after recording a few of the electronic songs, I decided to make one more album by Anti-Exorcist, but it doesn't mean that I would resurrect the project. That's the thing, that I didn't want to resurrect that side project. The side project was closed just when I've done the Ember album in 2017, and that's it. I never opened it up again. The side project is officially dead, okay? But so in the summer of 2018 until late August, I was working on Exodus album by the already dead side project Anti-Exorcist. Very often when I'm talking about Exodus album, I'm calling it posthumous album because it was the album by already dead side project that I never wanted and don't want to resurrect. So I didn't plan to make that album. I just started from doing some electronic experience, and then a few songs later I decided to make one more album by Anti-Exorcist, even though the side project was closed long time ago. After that album, I still was very active about creating music, but there was a very long pause about releasing the new stuff. Already in 2019, I released the debut single and the debut EP by my recent side project Dust. Yes, I still have a side project, but okay, I just wanna explain one thing. Uh, it is the concept. Dust is the conceptual post-apocalyptic side project that I started in 2018, and it is the only active side project that I have now. I also would like to mention that in early 2019 I founded my label Anti-Sanitaria Productions because other labels didn't want to release my music. From literally hundreds, maybe even thousands of labels, only one agreed to work with me. It was Cephalopagus Records, and I'm so appreciated that they gave me a chance. The remastered version of Exodus album was released there. Working with Cephalopagus Records also inspired me to start my own label. Just to mention, in late 2019 I stopped working with them. I've had a new music to offer, and the guy who I chatted with said it was stunning. He told me he needed to discuss it with the other owner of the label. Seems the other owner of the label wasn't so impressed because after that they suddenly started to ignore me and stopped replying to my messages. That's how I quit working with them. Okay, let's get back to the subject. What about my main music? To be honest, in 2019 it was a very hard year for me, and one of the reasons is that then I was already striving to start creating my main music that would represent my own personal feelings and ideas, where I could make whatever experiments I wanted without limiting myself with a concept of a specific project. Honestly, I enjoy creating the conceptual art with the specific ideas and genres or storytelling that wouldn't be about me. And side projects are great for this purpose. But besides it, I wanted to make a music that would be limitless and which I would describe as my own music for representing me as a person. And in 2019, I was reflecting on this subject. What is my own music? I already did something that I considered my main music, but then I always tried to be someone I'm not. I tried to create an image of myself, and the most awful thing about that was my attempt to believe that it was who I really was. I just have been I just have seen a lot of artists who were wearing costumes and masks or corpse paints on their faces, those who tried to make a show, and I wanted to be like them. Only later I understood that such kind of way will bring me nowhere. And I was pretending for so long that later it was such a challenge for me to understand who I really was in my music. Um, well, so did I release any music in 2019 besides single by Dust side project? Yes. I was working on the EP, The Purifiers, by again by Dust side project. It was very awesome experiments. It is a conceptual EP, and I was so glad. And actually, it was that EP that Cephalopagus Record, the label with whom I worked, did just they didn't accept it. Mm. So yeah, but anyway, I released it on my own label, Anti-Sanitaria Productions, and I'm happy that I released it. It was very awesome experience to work on it. So um, it also helped me. Uh, it also helped me a lot. I grown up as an artist a lot. So finally, in late 2019, I realized what I actually needed to do. In December of 2019, I've got my first MIDI keyboard. Previously, I've done everything digitally. My MIDI keyboard is not big, but it's enough for me, and besides keys, it also has the drum pads. Uh, Making music with it is really awesome, because then when I've done everything only on the DAW, I've done more like more like sampling stuff, sound collages. Even though I tried, of course, I tried to compose it to make it one composition, but it became more comfortable thing to do when I finally uh, started possessing my first MIDI keyboard. Then it was a new experience that brought me out of my comfort zone. At the first time when I tried to play something on it, I tried to make a dark wave song. I don't know, pretty interesting choice. Anyway, but it ended up to be a dungeon synth song. The song is called Shadow Masquerade. I recorded a lot of when I was recording it. I was experimenting a lot, and I tried to and I recorded many different short patterns, and from those patterns I created 8-minute composition that was in dungeon synth genre. This song is called Shadow Masquerade, and it was the first song that I have ever done with a MIDI keyboard. And at the same time, it was the first song for my debut demo, Earth on Helium. Um, that was finally my main music and not a side project. How did I create this title? I made it up pretty spontaneously, honestly. I just suddenly thought about the phrase Hell on Earth, then I reversed it as Earth on Hell. After that, I thought about the medical drugs and added suffix "eum". I got rid of the capital letters, united the phrase into the one word, and that's how Earth on Helium title was created. It is also pretty interesting wordplay because you can see the word helium within the title, so it can be interpreted as Earth on Helium, like the planet Earth is a balloon or something like that. I like the demo the way it is. It is very melancholic and psychedelic. It took me 4 months from December to March to make the first demo. It was complete on the March 7th and was released officially in the midnight of the March 14th. March 14th of 2020 was my 20th birthday. I find it very symbolical. From March to June 20th, I worked on my second demo, the face rap. It was less abstract but more melancholic. My skills got improved on the second demo. Besides experiments with a different music, I also did experiments with vocals. There were clean vocals, spoken word, and poetry. The final song, Overcast, was the most difficult to create. It was acoustic neo-folk song, so I needed to write tabs and rehearse a lot. Because I changed the strings for my guitar, I needed to adopt for the new strings. They sounded differently. Uh, what it meant that I needed to rewrite all tabs that I wrote before and rehearse again, but in June 20th, I finally completed the demo and released it officially. I was very excited about that. Mm, that demo, that demo also was more the concept, the conceptuality of the second demo also was more clear. because as I already told, the first demo was more abstract. It also was conceptual, but it was more abstract, and it was more experimental when when I was creating it. But um, when I created it, it was very different from the second demo that was more dense, more intense about the about the concept. Again, because it was less abstract. So yeah, I've done pretty serious progress while creating the second demo. Well, now it's time to discuss my debut full-length album. As I said in the beginning, I didn't plan to make the history of one disease, but it's a very important and necessary album because there were so many events in my life that brought me to creating this album. I don't want to say in this podcast what kind of moments influenced creating this album because it's very personal for me. But I'll say that without those moments, this album would not exist. Even if my past was different and this album would actually exist, it wouldn't be the way it is now. In this podcast, I don't want to say about the meaning of the album because it is very personal and I'd like the listeners to interpret it in their own way. So everyone who listened to it would have their own unique perception of the album. Mostly in this podcast, I'll talk about the backstage aspects. I think it would be interesting for the younger generations of musicians, sound engineers, and designers. Also for everyone who gave my album a listen and who are interested about the details of the creating process. I'll describe each of 6 days that it took. So, ladies and gentlemen, take some sweet cookies and glass of milk because now I'll tell you how I made my debut album. Day 1. A few days before the recording of the first song, The Russian Nihilism, I wasn't in the best mood. I even didn't have enough enthusiasm for creativity, so I decided to listen to the music that would be appropriate to my mood. And it was the debut album by the band Stalag Project, and I listened to their debut album Project Nihil. Though I've never been a big fan of noise, I just wanted to listen to something melancholic and nihilistic, so I listened and I was so impressed. After listening to Project Nihil album, I started to be more interested in noise genre. Later that day, I felt so inspired that I decided to make noise experiment myself. It was July 20th, and that's where it all began. I didn't want to make a mere 3 5 minute song. I wanted to compose at least 20 minute session of harsh noise wall. Honestly, I don't remember which samples I used for Russian nihilism. I think it were a few layers of different industrial sounds, such as the noise of engine and the background humming. I have a very huge library of samples that I recorded myself, but I don't really remember which ones I used. What I remember for sure is the effects that I used not only for Russian nihilism, but for the future songs for the album. Mm. For each song, I used different kinds of distortion, reverb, and delay effects. I also looked at the settings of each sample to make it sound differently. almost almost forgot to mention which DAW I am using to record my music. Yeah, maybe some of you will get disappointed, but I am using FL Studio. don't don't throw rotten eggs at me, okay? Firstly, I know that there are many other programs, but I tried to install them and I couldn't use them for different reasons. Secondly, from all DAWs that I used, I liked FL Studio more. It is accessible, it is easy to work with, and it's got an awesome interface, unlike many other programs. And the newer version of FL Studio got so many interesting functions that are making the stereotype of FL Studio's primitiveness irrelevant. Mostly I'm using FL Studio for sound engineering, but to play my music I'm using instruments and the recorded samples that I recorded myself mostly. Uh, so no, I'm using samples that I'm recording myself. I just don't like sampling of cutting different music patterns from other people's songs. So I don't like this kind of process. So I'm using the recorded samples that I recorded myself. So if you are still whining about Fruity Loops is not serious, it's not professional, then knock it off. Okay, when I made it clear, let's get back to the previous subject, recording of the Russian nihilism. When I've done all sounds that I needed, it was time to record. I played the electronic pattern on my MIDI keyboard. It is 2 octaves keyboard, not big, but it also has 8 drum pads, so it's enough for me. I made one sound for the keys and one sound for the pads. Did I at least rehearse? Maybe you wanna ask. No, I didn't. I wanted it to be improvised, to make it authentic. I just put MIDI keyboard on the table. I set a condenser microphone and plugged it in to my phone. I tried to keep the laptop from the microphone as far as possible because I didn't want the sounds of the laptop to be recorded. I didn't keep a very long distance between the laptop and the microphone because the music went through the laptop's dynamics. At that moment I forgot that I've had loudspeakers. So that's how it was. When everything was ready, I just pressed the recording button on my phone and started playing. I also did vocals for the song. I didn't sing there, I was breathing and whispering. It's called ASMR. Never really tried it before, but I found it interesting. What about the composition in general? I already did noise experiments before, but not something like that. It was very unique and hard experience because it's not so easy to listen to 20 minutes of harsh noise. After recording it, I felt discomfort in my ears, so I took a short rest. Anyway, even though I felt very exhausted, I was glad for what I've done. What the fuck are you talking about? It's not harsh noise, maybe you'll say. I planned it to be harsh noise wall, and when I played it, it was harsh noise wall, but the result wasn't. There are a few reasons why Dark Ambient was recorded instead. Firstly, it came out like that because of the distance between the dynamics of my laptop and the microphone. So not every tiny detail was catched by the microphone. Secondly, because there was pop filter on the tip of my microphone and the microphone itself wasn't directed straight at the source of the sound. That's why the song sounded so smoothly and was complete opposite of what it was expected to be. Honestly, I don't regret it. I'm glad because I like it when I try to do something, but during the creative process, the song starts following its own logic and becomes something else, something even better. The result was awesome because harsh noise was aggressive while dark ambient depicted the nihilistic mood that I've had then. It was expressed in the most accurate way, so I'm happy about the result. I didn't have the idea of the album yet, so the Russian Nihilism was released as a single. How I made the single cover, uh, I already knew what it's gonna be like. That's why I didn't hesitate. Just borrowed the camera stand, took my phone, and then went outside to take some pictures of myself on the road. Unfortunately, in during the practice, it didn't work out as well as I wanted to. So I went to a different location. I took a few pictures there, and the result was even better than I expected. There was one thing that happened. There was one thing that happened while I took a picture. At that moment, at that moment, one man was driving nearby. He looked at me and awkwardly asked, "What?" And then he drove away. I didn't say anything to him. This situation just made me smile, and I wasn't offended at all. After taking some pictures, I went back home, downloaded the best one on my computer. Also, I took pen and wrote on the paper the title and my pseudonym. Then I opened the Photoshop, made the photo black and white, cut it to make it square shaped. Uh, then I uploaded the signs that I wrote previously on the paper and made them red after putting them on the photo. After everything was ready, I uploaded the single on my social networks. It was the evening when it was the evening already when I've done the single, and I enjoyed the process so much that I thought about making one more session on the next day and turn it into album that would have 20-minute song on side A and 20-minute song on side B. Even though I don't understand the point of releasing albums on the cassettes in 2020, but I liked the side A, side B concept. So I wasn't mind if I would send it to a label that would release it on cassettes. Anyway, but unfortunately it didn't happen. Something better happened. Fortunately already. uh, Later, before going to sleep, I thought about making a full-length album with 4 20-minute sessions, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to. Day 2. On the next day, I made a decision to make an album. I already have had the idea of the concept and the song titles. I planned to record the Russian negativism. Uh, so the concept was like that. The concept just in the beginning that I would record the second session that would release it on cassettes. On side A there would be Russian nihilism, on side B there would be Russian negativism. that's how it would be. Unfortunately, I couldn't find label that would release it on a physical copies, but fortunately, I recorded the album in a different way, in much better way, and I released it on my own label. So it came out in a even much better way than I planned. So I don't regret anything. I plan to record the Russian negativism. Let's get back to the subject of recording of the second session. I plan to record Russian negativism. Then I wanted to record Russian nightmare and Russian sacrifice. Why all of the songs start from the word the Russian? I won't tell you because it's very personal. Is the album title The History of One Disease related to recent coronavirus somehow? Just to make it clear, fortunately I've never suffered from COVID-19, though it brought some discomfort to my life. It brought some discomfort to everyone else's life. Anyway, not about. Let's don't talk about this. So maybe I was kind of inspired by the recent events that happened when I created the title. But trust me, the album in general has nothing to do with COVID-19. So okay, I made it clear. Now you understand. Uh, there was one thing that I didn't plan for the album: guitar. In the beginning, I thought it's gonna be completely electronic album with vocals, without any lyrics. In the evening, I tried to play a few chords on my acoustic guitar, just rehearsing. But then I realized that I wanna play it for my album. Again, I neither prepared any tabs nor rehearsed it. I just played a few chords, I liked how they sounded, and I decided to improvise something within the range of those chords, maybe with addition of some other melodies and some other chords. So I think there were about 5-7 chords within 5-7 frets. There is always one weird thing about my guitar patterns, not only on the Russian negativism. I'm using quite a lot of different melodies, but that diversity is not always clear, and many of those chords that I played sound similar on the record. Whatever, I played the improvised guitar pattern for more than 11 minutes. When I only started, I understood where I should play, but didn't understand what I should play. Later, I started to feel more comfortable because I understood more. That's why on the record, the guitar sounds more smoothly and organized in the end. After recording it, I gave it a listen and I liked it so much that I left it the way it was, okay? Maybe it's not the most perfect guitar pattern in the whole history, but it's for sure very atmospheric, authentic, and sincere. What about vocals? Again, I didn't record them separately. I sang while playing guitar. I like to record vocals that way because it feels more natural for me. Uh, I feel more comfortable when I play guitar and sing at the same time and not recording guitar and vocals separately from each other. Uh, so that's just my I just prefer it like that. So okay, What about the way I sang on the Russian negativism? I didn't write any lyrics for that song, and there were no words on the song, only sounds. If on the Russian nihilism I only whispered, on the Russian negativism I sang. Maybe not so loudly, but I sang to support the sounds from the guitar, and it worked out very well. Again, it was very much ASMR thing because I did it pretty quietly and in a pretty calm way. So I'm happy. I'm happy about the result and how my vocals were combined with the instrumental. Well, right after the guitar and vocal session, I started working on the electronic pattern. To be honest, I don't remember what I used to record that pattern, but because I didn't want to make a noise session and wanted the Russian negativism to be more melodic and melancholic, I recorded dark ambient already on purpose. When I recorded it, I uploaded all patterns on my laptop. While working on the Russian negativism, I paid more attention to mixing and mastering. I don't remember whether I mixed Russian nihilism or not. If I did, maybe the sound engineering there was pretty minimalistic. But anyway, already already did. There was much more sound engineering after recording the patterns for the Russian negativism. So yeah, that's how it was about mixing and mastering. Even um, so the Russian the Russian negativism uh, took me about 3-5 hours to mix and master. Obviously, I didn't listen to the whole song while mixing because it was more than 20 minutes long. Um, I I did it part by part. Otherwise, it would be even more hardcore than it already was. Uh, Despite being very tired, later I listened to the whole song a few times and I was so happy with the result. Okay, day 3. In July 22nd, I decided to take a rest from the sessions, but to don't waste time, I planned to make the album cover. When it was very early morning, I listened to the second album by Stalag, but it was their, but it yeah, it was already their second album, Project Terror. Yes, while creating the album, Stalag's discography inspired me pretty well. That's why I mentioned it. Okay, let's get back to the previous subject. I already knew what I wanted my album cover to be. So when it was the evening around 7 or 8 p.m., I went to the roof of one building that I liked a lot and I took a few different pictures there. That place wasn't public, so I didn't have any problems about taking pictures. At the beginning, I wanted to be far away from the camera on the front cover and I liked how it looked on the photo. But after taking a few more pictures, I decided to keep it for an alternative version of the cover. Then I thought about uh, what will happen if I get very close to the camera. How will it look? I tried it. I took a few pictures and I was glad. When I came back home and uploaded almost all of the photos that I took a lot of them. Mm, I decided to make a minimum of changes in them because I liked them the way they were and wanted to keep them authentic. From all of those pictures, I chose only two. One for the front cover and one for the back cover. Um, it was pretty easy with the front cover because I just cut all unnecessary edges to make the photo square shaped. Same thing I did with the back cover. I didn't want to put any signs on the front cover because it would ruin the authenticity and the atmosphere in general. That's why I wrote everything on the back cover. Working on the back cover was more complicated because I wanted to write my pseudonym, the track list, and the album title in a pretty unusual way. I didn't want to type it with a standard font. I wanted to write it on the paper and then put the signs on the photo. And actually, I didn't want to write signs, I wanted to paint them. I understood that if I use a brush, it will look too dirty. I'm not such an expert about painting with a brush, uh, so I decided to do it in a different method. Uh, I just wanted it to because I wanted it to be more accurate. So what I've done, I took a toothpick, red and black paint, water and began to paint. I thought it's gonna be much easier, but it was difficult and it took me a few hours. I started it in the night of the June 22nd and finished it only in 2 a.m. of the June 23rd. When I finally done it, I happily went to the bed because I needed to restore my energy for the next session. And now I'd like to explain why among all pictures that I took, I chose those two that later became the front and the back covers. Because I took many different pictures, there were lots of different options to choose. But why did I choose those two? And why I've done them like that? I think you already know about the I think you already know about the uncanny valley and suspense effects. Um, if you don't, then internet will help you. My experience in uncanny valley effect is not new. When I designed my album covers and with the when I designed my album covers and with the years my skills were growing. The album cover of The History of One Disease is not an exception. After making the front cover, it reminded me of The Scream, the painting by Edward Munch. Don't take me wrong, I'm not a narcissistic asshole and I don't try to compare myself to the legendary painter, but I just had this association and I think the painting and the album cover have something in common between their concepts. Even though I wasn't inspired by the painting while making the album cover. And I think that I could even take the concept of my I could I think that I could even take the concept of my album cover to another level. Uh, so the Scream by Edward Munch and my album, especially the covers, are are very different actually. They are very different. Just because on the Scream, the thing is that it just reminded me, okay, it just my album cover just reminded me of The Scream by Edward Munch. So that's why I'm comparing it right now on the podcast, but I don't think that they are very similar to each other. So that's it, just to make it clear. Well, because on the Scream there was a screaming human being who saw something unknown. On my album cover, you can clearly see me, but because my face was covered with a mask and because the photo was dark, you can't see neither my face nor the emotions that it expresses, what creates the uncanny valley effect. And because my body is very close to the camera on the photo, you neither know about what's behind nor what's in front of me. Why was I wearing the mask? Why did I grab my head with my hands? Where was I? What did I feel at that moment? Maybe there was something about the door that was behind me. Is it is it even open? Is the door even open, or is it about to get closed? Maybe I have seen or did something behind that door that made me feel that way. Or maybe I came out and have seen or did something outside. What if I oppositely didn't come out of there, but I'm about to go through that door? If that's true, what will happen after I do that? Maybe I just tried to close my ears because it was noisy, or maybe completely opposite. Maybe because there was silence. What if I grabbed my head because of the way I felt then? Did I express madness or apathy? Was I depressed or was I excited? You don't know. You don't know it. You can only guess. Only I, as the author, know what was really happening on the album cover. What makes it even more intimate and personal. And of course, it can be a great mystification for the listeners. Um, Day 4. It was July 23rd, and again, I didn't work in the daytime. I started working when it was still bright, but the sunset was about to happen. I already knew that I will make the Russian Nightmare session, and I knew what I wanted it to be. I wanted to record 20 minutes of harsh, uncompromising industrial. Again, I don't remember which samples I used for it, but obviously I used distortion and maybe reverb and delay effects. When I was creating the sounds, I worked where I usually worked, but to play and to record them, I needed to move to another room because I considered the place where I usually worked too noisy at that moment. Then I spent all of the recording time in the dark room with the closed uh, curtains and doors. Sometimes it can be very hard to record at home, and that moment was the case. I didn't have the table there, so I took a small bedside table that was there, and I just sat on the floor. I didn't even use chair. Because with a chair it would be, because the bedside table was very low and it would be very uncomfortable to use chair in that moment, so that's why I sat on the floor. I plugged the laptop, the microphone, and the MIDI keyboard. There were so many wires on the floor and in the room where I worked that it looked like a cyberpunk, and I looked like an underground hacker from the 80s who was about to hack Pentagon and not like a music artist. When I recorded the main pattern, even though I knew what the song is about, I've had weird associations with the carpet bombings, nuclear bombings, war, and all other funny things that 20th century became famous for. The sound of the main pattern reminded me of the sirens of the emergency alert, or the sounds of the launched rocket. To be understood clearly, And to prevent misinformation, I'd like to repeat that these are just my associations while recording it. It's not what the song it's not what the song really about. There was one very funny moment while recording it. When I played for about 17-19 minutes of the session, the battery on my laptop was low and I've got a notification of it. Yes, during the session when I've almost done it, there was that kind of sound. Just something like that. People who are using laptops know about this sound. Uh, I even whispered angrily, like, fuck! I didn't want to stop the recording and do it again because I've almost done it. So I decided to go on because it's not a big deal to cut the sound of notification and my following reaction on it. After recording the main pattern, I began working on other patterns that were dark ambient. That was pretty interesting because to make them, I used one of the pictures from my yesterday photo session for the album cover and uploaded it into Harmor plugin. Uh, then I played those sounds that were created from the photo. The dark ambient patterns weren't as long as the main industrial pattern because I wanted to put them only into some specific places as the support for the main pattern. Each of them was only a few minutes long. I remember when I needed to re-record one of those patterns because I remember I remember that moment when I've got interrupted. So I needed to record one of the patterns again. But just to remind you, everything that I recorded for the Russian Nightmare was improvised. It was just unexpected situation when I needed to re-record it the second time, and the second already successful attempt to record that pattern after getting interrupted. It was very different from the first one that was failed. So yeah, it's still very improvised composition. So anyway, let's continue. Let's talk about the vocals. If talking about the vocals, I recorded them while playing the main pattern. And again, it was ASMR, but a different one from the Russian nihilism, and obviously it was also very different from the Russian negativism, because on the Russian nihilism, I only I only whispered and breathed, and on the Russian negativism, I was singing quietly. I was just singing quietly. But on the Russian nightmare, I whispered, I breathed, and also I hummed. In general, it took me more than 30 minutes to record everything for the Russian nightmare. I was sitting on the floor inside a dark room with a closed door and windows, and the windows also there. Just to remind you, there were lots of wires from all of the gear that I used, and it was lasting for more than 30 minutes. When I finally stood up and looked through the window, I've seen that it was already dark on the streets. I felt such a relief when I finished it. Seriously. Well, almost finished it, because after taking a rest, I immediately started mixing and mastering the Russian Nightmare. It took me a few more hours. I didn't listen to the whole session. I mixed it part by part. Otherwise, the process would be harder and slower. When I finally done it, I felt awesome. But I decided not to listen to it because I already wanted to check out the full album. So I waited until completing the final, the fourth session. Day 5. Before beginning my work on the Russian sacrifice, I was intrigued. Not a lot left until the completion of my debut album, Fotai. I was a few steps away from the moment I've been going to during those long 6 years. There is one interesting fact about the song title, The Russian Sacrifice. For a very short time I thought about calling it The Russian Suicide, but I quickly changed my mind and I called it The Russian Sacrifice for the personal reasons. And one of those reasons was the desire to end the album up on the optimistic note. I didn't want it to end up tragically because it didn't fit me and it didn't fit me. I told you that I started making this album when I've had a quiet nihilistic mood, unlike the time when I finished it. I felt to say I wasn't positive. To say I was positive means to say nothing. I felt so awesome. Seriously, that felt great. Well, even well, if Tolkien, if taking it more, what about the title? Well, and well, if taking it more globally, recently I'm more positive and optimistic person than the way I was a few years ago. It is the second reason why I wanted the History of One Disease album to end up optimistically, because it's more relevant to me. There were also other reasons why I wanted it to be that way, but I won't tell about them in this podcast. Very confidential information. To be honest, I don't remember whether I did guitars or electronics earlier. I'm not sure, but if I started from recording the electronic patterns, then it can only mean that I started the recording of the fourth session in the daytime. But if I started from the guitar patterns, then I started working in the evening. I just don't remember what I started from. And that's it. Whatever. I'll start from telling about the recording of the electronic patterns. Again, I'm not sure, but I think I definitely used sample that was sound of the water waves. I recorded it when I've been to the beach, maybe about 1 month ago. I wanted to use it for another song, but later I changed my mind and kept it for a different case. So the Russian Sacrifice became such case. It wasn't the only sample that I used. For the Russian Sacrifice, I also used some other industrial and natural sounds. Besides it, I used some digital synthesizers that were plugins on my DAW. Among the effects, I think it's already obvious that I used reverb and delay effects. When I made all of the sounds the way I wanted them to be, I played and recorded. I started working on the guitar patterns when it was late evening, so it was dark behind the windows. I already planned to record the guitar for the Russian Sacrifice, but unlike the Russian negativism, I didn't improvise that much. The Russian Sacrifice in general was the least improvised session of all four. Especially when I recorded the guitar, I paid more attention to the rehearsals, even though I still didn't write down any tabs for that song. I just tried to play something. After that I started to understand what I wanted to play for the song. I played it a few more times to make it sound better, and then I recorded it. That's it. What about the vocals? Well, again, I used ASMR for that session. I whispered and hummed, but surprisingly, on the final session I sang. Wow, I truly didn't expect it. But I actually happened that it happened differently from my earlier expectations. So I was happy. Firstly, it was quiet, kind of singing, but in the end, I actually sang out. I actually sang out loud, and there were lyrics. Wow! when I only started to make the uh, when I only started to make the history of one disease, I didn't plan to add any clean vocals with the lyrics. But while recording the final session, I understood that it was important to add, so I decided to add it. I recorded 3 guitar patterns for the Russian Sacrifice, and I sang while recording the third one. How did I write the lyrics? I wrote them in the same day as I recorded the 4th session. It didn't took too long, because I already knew what I wanted to write about, and I was very inspired to write it. I wanted it to be not just lyrics, but a poem. I wrote the prose. I don't wanna talk about the meaning of that prose again by the same reasons. It is very personal. When I recorded everything, it was time of mixing and mastering. I think it was the most difficult sound engineering process of all 4 sessions, because like other sessions, I mixed it part by part, and there were more parts to pay attention to. Also, there were more problems to fix. For example, vocals. The final part where I sang when I uploaded it didn't sound clear while being played with other patterns. I didn't understand anything from the words that I sang. That's why I needed to take care of it to make it sound clear, and I succeeded doing it. Same with the other patterns. In the beginning they all sounded quiet and blurred. So I mixed and mastered them until they started sound more loud and clear enough. I was so tired and it was late already, so I decided to continue sound engineering process tomorrow. Day 6. On the next day, in July 25th, after waking up, I continued mixing and mastering the Russian Sacrifice. It took me a few more hours. I don't remember how much specifically, but I think it took me at least 1 or 2 hours to complete it. When I finally done it, the album was ready. When it was ready, I didn't hesitate to upload it to the internet and post it on different social networks. When I, well, this is it. That's how I made my debut album. What can I say as a conclusion? Am I glad that I recorded the history of one disease? Am I happy for completing it in July 25th of 2020 and not earlier? Am I happy for making it the way it is? The answer is simple: yes. I'm so excited that I passed through such a long way and finally recorded my debut album, and I like the fact that the idea of it came to me so spontaneously, I don't know, it was like a fucking miracle. Wow. Checkmate, atheists. This is just so awesome. That's truly wonderful that it came so surprisingly to me. It came to me so spontaneously in that moment when I didn't plan to make it, but when I needed to make it, and it was worth it. And I'm happy for making it the way it is. It's obvious that the history of one disease is a very art house album. It's not for an overage consumer. I didn't expect. Did I expect one more question? Did I expect people to like it? No, because it is very important work personally for me, and I never tried to please people. I've never been a people pleaser, and I think this detail deserves more attention about it. In this, I think this detail deserves mentioning, deserves attention in this podcast. So I wanna tell one thing to make it clear. If you, as I already said, the History of One Disease album is a very art house album. It's not for an overage consumer, and if you're an overage consumer and if you expected to have fun while listening to it, then you'll be disappointed because this album is not made to entertain the listener. The music on it is absolutely anti-entertaining, and that's great. Don't take me wrong, I never even tried to contribute the teenage rebellion into it and made it anti-entertaining not to show off, but I made it for more serious reasons. Very often in my life I met so many people in my life who always tried to convince me so badly that I, as an artist, must entertain a potential audience. And it happened not only about music, it happened very often in my life. People always try to convince me to care about what other people around me were thinking about me and to seek for their approval. Be simple and people will be attracted by you. Change yourself and people will like you. Otherwise, you will end up alone. Smile even when you don't feel positive. Don't tell about what you really feel to be polite and to don't hurt anybody's feelings. Be a nice guy even to those who you hate. Blah 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 blah. I've heard this kind of bullshit for so long and so often. I've been shamed for not following all of those pseudo advices. And fortunately, I always successfully cultivated fuck you attitude within me. So I didn't become one more spineless piece of shit who always seeks for everyone's approval. So I never followed those pseudo advices because I always considered them humiliating, and everyone who tells and follows them I always considered my enemies. What about the album? I think this album is one I think this album is one of my biggest fuck yous to everyone who told me and who thinks that an artist must entertain the audience. I never cared about the overage consumers because they're just fucking cattle who think that an artist is a mere clown and not a person with his own thoughts and feelings. And if you disagree with me, then I'll tell one more time. Fuck you. If you like catchy and repetitive choruses that would make you shake your ass, if you like music to have a party and to drink alcohol with, if you like banal love songs and songs about fancy cars and clothes, then don't listen to my album because you'll find it too long and boring. And if you are searching for rare underground stuff that would feed your ego and that would give you the fake feeling of supremacy over others, then don't listen to my album because it wasn't made by an ultra dark underground lord from hell. It was made by a guy mostly at his home who likes music and who tries to make a living out of it. There is nothing to show off about listening to my music, you see? This album is a very important and serious work personally for me. It was not made to entertain the mainstream biomass, and it was not made to show off in front of the underground snobs. And you know what? I'm so happy about it.